Hello, YouTube. I'm finally accepting the fact that we're not going to get down the track again this year. It's unfortunate, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. When we did this repair here, move the brake lines further away from the headers, I was in the mindset that I had to get it done in a hurry because we might actually get down the track. But now that I've got the winner, what I want to do is take these lines, come down, go to the firewall, follow the firewall down, put my stress relief coil down here, and go into the proportioning valve. And that'll take these pipes, all this right here, away from the header. And then what I might do, I don't know, is I might make a heat shield that comes out and guards this master cylinder against heat. You know, there's no reason why I shouldn't do that. So I think now that we have the time, let's do it. These are these newfangled fittings that are only finger tight, and you just take them right off. Now we need a straight piece of brake line, and we can get it pretty close by just rolling it out. I kind of like this line. It doesn't have paint on it. We'll put powder coat on it when we're done. I should mention that this is not the 50-50 mix of copper and steel. This is just steel line. NHRA doesn't like the mix. So this is straight steel line, and just be careful with it. You can get it nice and straight, and we can go from there. And we got at least one piece there now. I think the first thing I'll do here is cut off a manageable length. And this thing is 21 inches plus 6 inches, 27 inches. So we'll make it 30 inches long, and that should be plenty long for our new. I'm going to make it even longer than that. What the heck? I'd rather have too much than too little. Now we need to put a flare on this end. To get a good flare, there's several things you need to do. Number one is you got to have your cut square. It has to be straight. Number two is when you make a cut with a pipe cutter, it squeezes the pipe in and you can see how it's closed off. So we got to get rid of that. And now we have a nice bevel there, and we'll go about our flare. Normally at this point we'd take and put a fitting on the pipe, but as it is a straight pipe, we don't have to worry about that right now. What we're going to do is put it into the fixture here. This is an important measurement here. This is the die that makes the double flare. And on the first step of that die is the dimension that you want that pipe sticking up out of the fixture to make your double flare. So what you have to do is adjust the pipe up and down until it's exactly even with the top of that flare. Put a drop of oil on the end of the pipe, put the die on, put the yoke on, tighten it down, get it square. Back it off, take the die out, put the yoke back into position, and finish our double flare. So there's the double flare. What we want to do here is come up out of this port to about that high and then make like a 30-degree bend to the firewall. So the first bend will be up and like a 30-degree bend to get it to the firewall. With our fitting in place, we want to come up about 3.5 inches and put a bend towards the firewall. So, and we set about 30 degrees. So that's about 30 degrees. Let's see where we're at. We'll put our second bend right about there. And that should bring it parallel to the firewall. We need more bend. This is what we have so far. We've got the line coming out of the back port of the proportioning valve, running around the backside of the roll cage and up along the steering column, and we'll put a slight bend, bring it over here and go into that port. But first what we have to do is put in the anti-vibration loop. And we're going to do it right here, right here. With the line clamped in place, we'll try to make our loop without making a kink. And come off at the same angle. Now we may have to twist that a little bit. We got what we wanted down here. It comes up, goes to the firewall, does our loop, comes up between the roll bar and the steering column. However, what we need to do now is come up here, come across, and come to this port. And I don't know that I have enough line. We may have to make a whole nother line. I hadn't really planned this. I had planned on coming up across and up to the port on this side. But now that I look at it, you know, simplicity, it comes straight up, come over to this port right here. This is the rear port. It's for the rear brakes. And I may just have enough line to do that. So let's try that. Let's put a bend in here and a bend to come into here and see if we can make it fit. The way I mark these more critical bends is I mark the beginning point of where I want to be on the tube and the end point where I want it to be and the side that I want bent. That way when I take it off, I know exactly where to put that bend, and I think that's a little low. We need to go a little higher than that. So this is our marking, the beginning and the ending and the inside of the bend. Now I'm going to move that up just a little bit because I think I'm low. So let's see, that's the inside of the bend. So it's got to go like this. And we want to move it up a little bit. It wasn't high enough, so I want to go up higher. Okay. And this wants to be a 90-degree bend. Let's see what we got. I think we're making progress. This needs to come up just a little bit, but that's okay, we can do that. We want the bend to start right here and end right there. And we want this to be the outside instead of the inside. And we want a 90-degree bend. We'll blow any shavings that might be in the line from cutting out making sure that we got a fitting on there. Be a heck of a thing to do this and then not have a fitting. All right, let's see if we can get this to go on. The first thing I'll do is I'll move the port over to the starboard side here. Here we go with the first attempt to screw in both ends. We'll put the proportioning valve one in first because that's the one we've been putting in first all along here. And the test of a good fit is if we can screw it in with your fingers. Okay, that's in. Well, let's see if we can get the pipe in the hole. We can do that. Can we get it threaded? No, it needs to come up a little bit. There we go, finger tight. All right, so all we gotta do is secure this right here someplace. And we've got one of the lines run. And it's well away from the headers now. That's not gonna work, guys. I don't like it. I made a new line in a different form. Comes out of the master, does a 90 to the firewall, goes right up against the firewall, down to the bend in the firewall, follows the firewall down to the point where it does the anti-vibration coil, and on down to the first port on the proportioning valve, which is for the front brakes. And that looks pretty good. We'll put a clamp right there and we'll be good. This was our first attempt, and we can put it in here for reference someplace. And by the way, I don't think lines fit unless you can finger tight the fittings in. Now that would work, but it looks terrible. Although we do function over form here, we can also make it look nice. So I think what we have to do here is come further out of the master cylinder, go to the firewall, go straight down the firewall, do our loop here, and then go to the proportioning valve. So we need to remake this line. Well, the last piece of pipe that I cut off was 40 inches, and I didn't have much left, and this is going to be longer, so let's go to 50 inches. That's 10 inches longer, and hopefully we have enough. So we're going to go to 50 inches. Clean up the end of the tube. What we're going to do different this time is this rear line, which is for the rear brakes. We're going to come up, cross over the frame to the firewall, do our anti-vibration loop, then come up this side rather than in between the roll bar and the steering column, up here, and then to the master cylinder. So the first bend we need is about 2.5 inches up, and it's it's more than a 45, but it's not a 90. So let's put that first bend in. Next, we're going to put the stress relief loop in, and that wants to go here. It wants to start here and go all the way around like that. So this right here is the inside of the loop. The next bend we have to put in is this one right here. We want it to go around the firewall. So halfway, and this is the outside. And we'll put that bend in. Okay, way too much bend. That's closer, still too much bend. Okay, now we have to figure out where to make this bend here. There's going to be right there, halfway. So this is the center of the bend. We want up there and down there. And this is the inside. And we want a 90-degree bend here. 90, yes, 90-degree bend. Okay, what we need here now is this to be the center of our bend, right there. We'll start here, and we'll end here. And this will be the outside. Okay, now we get clamped up like that. That's fine. With the brake lines run and secure, I think the next thing to do is to make a heat shield of some sorts for the master cylinder itself. And I'm thinking something like that. Not that big, obviously, but that kind of curve coming out that far. I think that's something we can do. Let's try it. I guess what I want to do is, if I end up like that, so we want to cut it off right about there. And the idea is to come up like this. Much shorter. How much shorter? We can cut that much off. Let's try that. Well, that's what I was thinking, something like that. What I'm going to do is create tabs on the end by cutting out these two pieces, and that'll make a tab that I can bend over and screw into the firewall. Almost 2 inches. This is the pattern I've come up with. Let's see what it looks like on the car. So the tabs go to the firewall, but they have to be bent yet. So I'm going to turn it this way. And this is what we're kind of looking at. Something like that. And I think that's good. It doesn't have to be quite that long, maybe. Let's get the tabs bent and see what it looks like. I can't do it this way. I got to do it the other way. This is a 3-roll slip roller that I bought when I did the wheel wells for the 49. And I have it set up for an 18 gauge piece of metal. And if we run it through backwards, it will bend it and give us a nice curve. So I'm going to do that with paper, but the paper is going to be thinner, so I'm going to have to adjust the tightness here. Okay, here we go. This is our first roll. It won't be much, and it's on paper. You can see it's got a bend to it, and now we have to adjust it so we get more of a bend. This is backwards, but that's the idea right there. I think that's just about right. Let's, there we go. Let's bend those tabs and see how that fits. Now, I won't be able to do this with the real piece. We'll have to do it by bending it with hand pliers. But seeing how the paper's this flexible, we'll bend the tabs this way. This is the way our piece is fitting, right up against the bottom of those 2 bolts on the firewall, just like that. I think the length is pretty good. I think I'll take a 1/2 inch off the length and round the corners. We'll measure off a 1/2 inch and correct a little bit on my line. Go through the mark. Okay. Now we'll create a round corner. Trim that off. And that's what we're looking at. And I think that'll be all right. Does the job. Remember, function over form. But that's not too bad. Now all we have to do is make it out of metal. All right, let's cut as much out on the bandsaw as we can. We'll round off our corners. We'll continue to whittle away the stuff that we don't want. Now we have to cut out our little tabs. And we want to make sure we cut the waste out, not the tab out. with our piece of metal looking pretty much like our pattern, what we need to do now, while it's still flat, is to put the holes in it for the screws that are going to hold this thing to the wall. And these tabs are 1 1/8 inches. So if I make it a 1/2 inch from the edge, that'll leave a little bit for the bend. So this is 1¼ inch, so halfway is 5/8. So there's 5/8 right there. And now we'll drill some pilot holes. And now we'll finish both sides of the hole off with a little bevel, although no one will ever see it. Now we get to go bend it. So this was the test piece, and what I have to do is get this thing back so that it's pretty much flat. I experimented and I did get a bend. We need a bend that's much more pronounced than that, and it'll take several steps to get there. But we need to take all the bend out of it now so that we can feed the new piece through. All right. What we want to do is go through without contacting the 3rd roller. And we got to go down quite a ways. The front 2 rollers control the tension on the piece of the metal. And with the rollers adjusted so that the piece of metal will roll back and forth by itself, we can now adjust the back roller. And what we do is roll this thing out and then bring the back roller up so that it touches the piece of metal. So that we know that it's parallel. And now we'll take it out, go up a turn on our roller, and roll our piece through. And now we'll go up another turn. We're almost there. I'm only going to go a 1/2 turn this time. And let's run this through. And go check it again. So here's our heat shield. And it's going to go pretty much like that, except we'll be turned around and these tabs will be bent over so that we can screw it into the firewall. But this is what it's going to look like. And I'm happy with that. That'll be just fine. And now we're going to bend these tabs, and this may be ugly, but we're going to go 90 degrees. Here we go. That's 90 degrees. And this is what we have. It goes just like that. We're going to put it, well, we'll put it a little higher. We'll put it right there. I think that's perfect. That'll do the job. Let's mark the holes, drill some more holes in my firewall, and then we'll clean this up and powder coat it. Let's see if our creation fits. Okay? That's plenty strong. Let's put the headers on and see what it looks like. This is the line that we had with the loop that came within about 1 inch of our header. Now that we've eliminated that and we come out of the proportioning valve, run our loop parallel with the firewall and up along the firewall to the master cylinder, it's as far away from the headers as I can get. And I think the heat shield is going to do a job. It's time to prepare the heat shield for powder coat, and at the same time we'll powder coat the brake lines. We'll do the brake lines in silver and we'll do the heat shield black, I believe. I happen to have flat black in the powder coat, so that's what the heat shield's going to end up as, is flat black. Into the oven we go. See you in 30 minutes. With the heat shield and the brake lines powder coated, let's put them on and see what they look like. We can't really tighten these lines in because we have to bleed the master cylinder. And I'm lucky that our firewall is perpendicular to the ground, or it is when I jack the back end of the car up, so that we can bench bleed the master cylinder right on the car. So we'll just put these in finger tight because we're going to have to loosen them back up for the bleeding. Everything is finger tight on the brake lines, and we're going to leave them that way until we bleed. And now what we're going to do is put in the clamps. Once again, following our brake lines up from the proportioning valve, they're now powder coated. We go up along the firewall, up to the master cylinder, and the lines are above the heat shield. The heat shield's underneath the master cylinder. There's lots of space between the master cylinder and the heat shield and the headers. I think we've accomplished our goal here on this side by protecting this master cylinder in a way that it was not protected before. And with the lines running away from the headers, I think that's good. I think we accomplished our goal. If you enjoyed this video, there will be more.